sin to hide, but you have sent him from your side to walk upon this guilty sod and to become the Lamb of God. Your gift of love and crucified, and that his Lord in this night, the humble King, Lamb of God, and sacrifice the Lamb of God. O Lamb of God, sweet Lamb of God, I love the holy Lamb of God. Oh, wash me in his precious blood, my Jesus Christ, the Lamb of God. I was so lost, I should have died, but you have brought me to your side, to be led by your staff and rod, and to be called the Lamb of God. O Lamb of God, sweet Lamb of God, I love the holy Lamb of God. Oh, wash me in his precious blood, my Jesus Christ, the Lamb of God. I serve a risen Savior, he's in the world today. I know that he's living, whatever may be said. I see his hand of mercy, I hear his voice of cheer, and just as I need him, he's always here. He lives, Christ Jesus lives today. He walks with me and talks with me along that narrow way. He lives, salvation to them all. He lets me now, I won't be his. He lives within my heart. In all the world around me, I see his loving care. And though my heart was weary, I never will despair. I know that he is leading through all the stormy paths. The day of his appearing will come at last. He lives, Christ Jesus lives today. He walks with me and talks with me along that narrow way. He lives, salvation to them all. You ask me now, I know he lives. He lives within my heart. Rejoice, rejoice, O Christian, rejoice and sing. Eternal hallelujah to Jesus Christ the King. The hope of all who seek him, the help of all who find. Another grace so loving, so good and kind. He lives, Christ Jesus lives today. He walks with me and talks with me along life's narrow way. He lives, salvation to them all. You ask me now, I know he lives. He lives within my heart.
You moved. Good morning. Doing good. Well, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? I can kind of hear myself, so you can hear me up there? All right. Have you ever gotten up on a morning when you had something to do and you had a particular time that you had to get her done and everything goes wrong? That's my morning. That was my morning today. I was on my way to this building early to help with things. And my wife said, "Did you bring the cheese?" I said, "No, I forgot the cheese because we signed up to bring cheese to the Smith's house tonight." Had to turn around and go back. That threw me behind. She said, "You want me to go in and find it? Because it's in the refrigerator." And I can't find anything in the refrigerator. And I said, no. I said, "Tell me where it's at." And she kind of gave me a right hand, this, and I did. I found it, and then I found a bag. I didn't want her to go in because she walks slower than I do. For reasons that you all know. Got back in the car and headed on. I was running late. She said, "Did you get your pill?" No, I forgot my pill. And that's the pill I have to take before I talk because otherwise I can't hardly talk. Oh, which reminds me, I might get my candy out. I about forgot that too. So I went back, got the pill. It was sitting on a little counter there where we watched TV. And there's about 7 bottles, all about the same size. I didn't have time to read them. I brought all of them. She read the labels on the way here, and I took one of them pills. And so far it's worked. I can still talk. Oh, it's good to be with you this morning. Do you remember where we were last week in our study of John? Huh? We're not in John? John's our friend. Okay. They could give me something for my throat, but I hadn't got a hearing aid yet. So you got to bear with me. Yeah, we talked about the fact that before we studied the writings of John, let's know a little bit about John so that we could relate, if you will, to the things that the synoptic gospels included, but things that John didn't include. We talked a little bit about his life and some of the people who influenced him. Some of the things that John included in his epistle and things that he did not include in his epistle. And we talked about some of those, but I didn't get finished with those. I'd like to just finish that this morning as we kind of introduce this lesson today. John never did mention in his writings any of the parables. I find that interesting. Why do you suppose that John did not include any of the parables in his writings? What could possibly keep him from telling some of the most amazing lifelike stories with spiritual meanings that meant so much to all of us as we read through them and saw the impact of those parables on the people of that time and on the people today? Why would John not do that? So I thought about that and I agree, because it's determined that John wrote his letter after Patmos, and it had gone back to Ephesus, and that's probably where he he passed, and all the other epistles had been written as best we know, especially Paul's. But Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they're in the mid-60s. Most people think it was in the mid-60s. Some scholars believe that John wrote his in the late 60s, and some think he wrote it after Revelation, which would have been in the 90s, most people think. But some people date that in the 62. So we don't really know. But it could very well be that those things had already been discussed and recorded, and John didn't mention those because he had enough to say about who Jesus was versus what Jesus did. So parables was one thing that he did not mention. And another very interesting thing is that of the writings of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, we read about God's power, God meaning Christ's power, to dominate the demons, exorcism, what they call exorcism. The ability for the spirits of Satan to abide in somebody, and the voice of Christ expelling them, taking them out. I think that's amazing because it tells us the power of Christ, who John says was God. To be able to speak the word to this person who is possessed with demons and just say, get out. And they'll come out screaming and hollering. John didn't mention any of that. I find that interesting because it shows and demonstrates the power of God over Satan. So that was an interesting one. And the one that really amazes me that he left out, that the other ones included, was the transfiguration. I want you to think about what you would have thought if you had been there. One of the three, you had made the fourth one. Peter, James, and John, and then there's you. And Jesus takes you to a remote place, and he is transfigured. And there's Moses, and there's Elijah, and you're watching these three have a discussion. Christ is changed, his clothes as white as a fuller can make them. His face shined like the sun. He was transfigured right there before you. I don't think I'd ever forget that. Would you? If you had been there, it would have been seared in your mind because you would have seen Christ talking to the lawgiver, and to one of the greatest prophets that ever walked the earth. And there you are. And not only that, but you heard the voice of God. This is my son, in whom I'm well pleased. Would you have said anything? I wouldn't have. I don't believe I would have said a thing. I'd be just speechless. Not Peter. No, this is good. Let's build three tabernacles. No. Voice from heaven. This is my son, in whom I'm well pleased. You listen to him. I don't believe any of us in here would have ever forgotten that. And if we were ever to write a summary about who God is, or who Christ was and is, I would have included that. That's me. I could not ever forget that moment. Moses, Elijah, talking with Christ, and a voice from God. I'd write home about that. But it had already been written. Perhaps. I think there's 32 parables, I think, that are written between the three synoptic gospels. John doesn't mention a one. Could be because they'd already been discussed. Could be. There are things, though, that are in John's epistle that are not in the other gospels. And one of them is the visit with Nicodemus. You remember that story? It's recorded by John. Nicodemus, really interested in what this newcomer on the religious scene had to say. And yet he was concerned about his position, and so he met Jesus at night. John thought that was an important event to be recorded so that we could see how Nicodemus and Christ conversed, and we'll look at that in the scriptures. He talks about the woman caught in adultery. None of the other apostles covered that. And you know that story. And again, we'll look at that as we go through John. Another thing that John included that's not in the Gospels is at the Last Supper, the Passover feast. And Christ washing the feet of the apostles gathered there. None of them mentioned that. Why did John mention that? Why do you think John would write about his feet being washed? Yeah. Yes. It's a kind of a picture in your mind when you kind of go through that reading and you focus on what's really happening here. Because as John opens his epistle to us, he tells us that Christ was God. That's what he says. That's how he opens it. And then he talks about God washing your feet. You ever think about that? Who was this Christ? Yeah. Grasp that he was here to serve. Just grasp that. This is God. This is God who spoke the word and all things came into being. Just think about that. And he washes your feet. And he was setting an example of service. If he can do that, what could we do as his children in terms of serving others? That's hard to grasp. We'll look at that one. We'll look at that one also. The other thing that John includes that the other writers did not is after Christ was resurrected from the dead, and his disciples had gone, 7 of his disciples were gone fishing up in Galilee, and Peter was out on the boat with them, and there was a guy on the shore there that was cooking or had a fire going. And some of the disciples in that boat with Peter said, "Hey, that's Jesus. That's Jesus. The one that's been crucified. He's over there. He's cooking." Peter jumped in the water. The rest of them rowed the boat, it says, back, pulling a net full of fishes. That's how John knew he was Christ, because remember when Jesus got there, he said, "Hey, you get anything?" "No, I got a net on the other side." So many fish they could hardly bring it in. That's Jesus. That's God. Peter jumped in water. None of the apostles wrote about that. It's John. I find that interesting. But the most interesting thing in all of John's writings that really, really confound me, I say confound, I think is the right word, is the first words in his writing. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Can anybody explain that to me? Take the first 3 words. In the beginning. In the beginning of what? In the beginning of creation?
I think yes. Because if not, it would be a contradiction.
Okay. In my world and in your world, there's always a beginning and there's always an end. I can't think beyond that. If you ask me, what was your beginning? I'd say Okmulgee, Oklahoma, 1942. And you're thinking, well, he's 82 years old. Yeah, that's right. At my beginning, I understand that. I was born. I breathed my first breath right there in Okmulgee, Oklahoma. I think I'm going to breathe my last breath here in McMinnville, Tennessee. I have no plans to go anywhere in this life. We love it here. Plan to stay here. I plan to die here. I even built a little apartment, so when I get too old and feeble, they won't take me away. They'll just shove me over in that little apartment, and I'll just stay right there till I'm gone. That's my ending. I got a beginning and I got an ending. You all do. But God had no beginning. He created the beginning, but he had no beginning. And so from that point on, I get totally confused. And the more I think about it, the more confused I get. How can God be without a beginning? How can he be without an end? So the question is, how can you comprehend God? I can't. We can use words. God is love. I got it. I got some grasp of that because I love my wife. I love you guys. I know what love is. I'm not sure I know what the love of God is. It's greater than I can imagine. Can't get my head in. John, I think that's why John put these first words out there to say, I'm going to tell you something that you ain't going to understand. But I'm going to tell you anyway. In the beginning was the Word. I speak a lot of words. Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just sit silently and think and get more confused. The more I think, the more confused I get about thinking about God and eternity. What did he do before the beginning? We say that the beginning was when he created the heavens and the earth. I don't disagree with that. What before that? What did he do? We don't know.
Don't you think this beginning is our beginning?
I do.
The world as we know it?
I do. It can't be his beginning because he had no beginning. Right? So what did he do? Where was God before he created the heavens and the earth? Was this the only beginning? Could there have been a beginning before the beginning? What did he do? Float around in a spiritual world? I don't think God sat idle for eternity until the beginning of the earth. I don't know what he did. But John, when he wrote these words, he stirred, and I read them, it stirred my thinking about how powerful, how eternal, how great God is, and I cannot get my head around it. In the beginning. 3 words drives me nuts. Yeah. Yeah, nowhere does it tell us. No. But he existed. It wasn't like he didn't exist. And I don't understand eternity. But then it gets to the point where it's something I can understand. That this creator, this spirit, God is a spirit. And they that worship him got to do it in spirit and in truth. Your flesh can't do it. It's got to be you, who you are, that does that. We'll talk about that later. Now, it says that Jesus Christ was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. What does that make Jesus Christ? Makes him God. God came down. God came down. Why on earth did he come down? Why did Jesus come down?
Seek and save the lost.
That's right. Because he's needed to save us from our sins. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. I would have never thought to write it that way. God was a Word. What's a word? Can you touch it? Can you touch a word? Can you take a knife and cut a word up? Can you poke a hole in it? What's a word? It floats in the air and hits your eardrum. That's a word. In the beginning was the Word. Just a voice speaking. And yet it had the power to create everything that's created. I can't grasp that. I can't say anyway, anything I say, I cannot create anything. But God said something, and here we are. I want you to think about the creation. On your head is hair. I don't care if you look at look, there's a few bald-headed, semi-bald-headed folks in here, among whom I'm not the least. But I've got some hair. You know how many atoms it takes to cover the width of a hair so that you can see it? 100,000 atoms. Avogadro's number, he was a physicist, had to create a way to measure the atomic structure of an atom. And it's 1 minus 10,000. I don't know if you know what that means or not, but in our language it simply says it takes 100,000 of them for you to see a dot. Take 100,000 atoms all put together, 100,000 of them, and you might be able to see it. There's more atoms in your, if you put all the hair we got in this room together, there's not a number, they call it goo-goo-plex. Have you ever heard of goo-goo-plex? It's the biggest number that can possibly be said, goo-goo-plex. Don't know where it came from, don't know where it's going, but it's goo-goo-plex. All the hair, pile it up right here. There's not a number in the universe except goo-goo-plex that would tell you how many atoms there is. Just in the hair. Atoms. Has a nucleus, has electrons running around it. And I think they've got up to a little over 100 different atomic structures that make up everything on the earth. They're called elements, called the periodic table. Scientists have pretty much got that nailed. But it wasn't in my lifetime that they found out just about how to bust that little atom up and found enormous energy resulting in the atomic bomb. If you think about what God had to do to create enough atoms to create the earth, it's impossible. Cannot do it. Remember, it takes 100,000 atoms just to qualify the thickness of a hair. So when you look, it's hard for me to imagine, but if you shrink it down to the point that you can't see it, and then shrink it down 100,000 times more, you've got a pretty small piece called an electron. Protons and electrons. It's a little universe. It's got a nucleus, and it's got things running around it. Little bitty things. Can't see them, too small. Then you got the universe. And you got the earth, and you got the sun, and it's going around. You say, yeah, but the sun was gas. Yeah, but gases is made up of atoms, you know that? How many goo-goo-plexes could there possibly be? When you think about the universe made up of words from God, said, In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God, all things were made by Him, without Him not anything made that was made. That means the earth, that means the skies, that means the heavens, that means under the earth, it means everything. Everything. That's our God. He spoke it, and there it is. And my tablet just died. I know you guys saying he's crazy. No, it did, it died. Oh, it came back alive. Listen, I just want you to grasp as best we can who it is that we serve and who it is that came to serve us and to wash our feet and to grant us salvation. It's the one that spoke everything into existence, the one that created us in the beginning. And He became flesh. He, God, became flesh and dwelt among us. And we beheld His glory as the glory of the only begotten of the Father. Who are you? Who are you that God would come visit you? What is it that God would leave a place we call heaven and come visit you? Why? Because He loves you, and I can't even fathom the greatness of that love. Let me see if I. Let's see if.
We are His creation. He created us just as we were talking about. He created us and He loves us. And because we're His creation, He wants us to be with Him. He wants us to be a part of Him and be with Him throughout eternity. He created us. He made us. He formed us. All the things you said or that you mentioned. But because of that, He loved us enough and wanted us to be His and no one else.
And no one else's.
Brother Dennis,
Yes, sir.
there's a definition in Strong's, about the definition of the word.
Yeah.
When you said that in the beginning was the word, it says in John, it denotes the essential word of God, Jesus Christ, the personal wisdom and power in union with God. His ministry and creation and government of the universe, the cause of all the world's life, both physical and ethical, which for the procurement of man's salvation put on human nature in the person of Jesus the Messiah, the second person in Godhead, and shone forth conspicuously from His words and His deeds.
Okay.
So that's what the word is. It's what God said. It's what God wanted. It's what God knew that we needed. It's the substance that we have to be acquainted with to be able to find salvation.
What's amazing to me is there are no words that can grasp what the Word is. You know what I'm saying? I cannot speak any words that could quantify the God, the Word. Words can't explain the Word. The heart can measure it as best it can. And I don't believe there's an orator on the earth that had a command of the language, whatever language it might be, who could speak words that would quantify God. I don't believe it's possible. I don't think you can count the number of atoms in the universe. I don't think it's possible. It just can't happen. But we do the best we can with what we've been given. And what we've been given are the writings of men who saw the Word. They saw it, they experienced it, they witnessed it, and they are witnesses for God. And so we read these words believing full well that God created all things. Let me read to you from Exodus chapter 20, verse 11. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. I'm an old-fashioned guy. I admit that. Don't make any bones about it. I've read writings of very knowledgeable people. And you may disagree with this, and it's okay. I don't care. It's all right. If you'll let me disagree with you, we'll still be friends. I firmly believe that God created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. 6 days. Not 6 million years, but 6 days. I believe that. Moses knew what a day was. God knew what a day was. He created it. And he said he rested on the seventh day. Now, I can argue with that, but don't want to. Don't need to. I watch things on TV, these science, these shows that, believe it or not, I don't know what this is called, philosophers, I guess. And they explain why it has to be 1 million years, but they can't explain God. Neither can I. But I can believe him. When he says a day is a day, it's a day. I know what a day is. Moses knew what a day was. God knew what a day was. It says in Genesis. I just had to say that. I didn't. I just had to say it. I get so frustrated, and Tony has to turn the channel sometimes because I get so frustrated at the nonsense that's coming across that tube into the ears of Americans all over the. It just aggravates the hound out of me. I don't know why, but it does. I can't. They're just so long I just can't take anymore. It's kind of like me teaching. You about had all you can take, but you're going to have to sit there a few minutes. How much time we got? All right, let's see what we can get here. In that first verse, in the beginning was the Word. It didn't say in the beginning was a word. I asked my wife, who's an English major. In our house, she's an English major. She majored in, what do you call the people that write articles? What was it? Journalism, that's it. Journalism. That's our major. But in our house, she explains to me the English language sometimes. And she told me that "the" means a definite article. A definite article. Now, to me, that means it can't be a widespread "the." It narrows it down to a specific "the." Does that make sense? In the beginning was the Word. Not a word, but the Word. That's the only reason I can read the Bible and believe it, is because it's the Word of God. And if you don't believe that, there was a rabbi that had his disciples, his Talmudid they call them, and he had one of them start with Genesis and said, read me Genesis. So the student started reading. In the beginning, God, he said, well, read that again. He said, the guy read it again. In the beginning, God, stop. Read it again. He did that 7 times. 7 times. In the beginning, God, he said, stop right there. Because if you don't believe that, the rest of it will mean nothing. That's right. If you don't believe that, don't waste your time reading the rest of it. And the proof of God is underneath your feet. If you go to college and you have a professor tell you that there is no God, you go outside and stomp your feet on the ground and say, where'd that come from? Just go out and stomp your feet on the ground. How is it that, where'd it come from? Well, it came out of gas that came together and no. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And if you don't believe that, stop. You don't need to go any further because it won't make any sense. Did I hear a bell? That was the second one? Oh. Well, we got through 6 words. It'll go a lot faster. It'll go a lot faster after we get just through this introduction. Thank you for your attention. You're very kind.